Thank you, Joe. Good morning and welcome to this Breeio webinar. We're focusing on virtual classroom session design and delivery this morning. I'm Matt Borg. I'm on the senior team at Actian and Breeio. And we've been working in learning and development in the UK for around 40 years now. And one of our objectives during that entire time really has been to partner with and equip learning and development professionals with the skills and tools and systems and communication programs that you need to really shine and make a difference. And so as part of that, we ran a number of these webinar sessions last year. And so this morning, we're going to take a moment to reflect on some of the things that we learned last year. And what a year it was. We'll hear some success stories, people who implemented some of those things and how they got on. And we're also going to take a moment just to look forward to how we might step up our design and delivery of virtual classroom sessions. And to help us do that, this morning we have Joe Cook of Lightbulb Moment. Joe is a leading expert in the UK on virtual learning. She's been a leader in this area since 2013. She's delivered well over 1,000 hours of these sorts of sessions, worked with hundreds of organizations across all different platforms. So Joe is the perfect person to help us think about this morning and step up and think about how we make a real difference in 2021. Let me just say before I hand over to Joe that I have no doubt that the content that Joe is going to take us through this morning will be helpful. I think we'll get some great ideas of things that we can implement. But I know personally what I find most helpful in these sessions is watching how Joe leads a session. I think that we can all pick up some great ideas from just watching a very experienced professional. So thank you, Joe. Thanks for leading us this morning.
Oh, thank you. What a lovely introduction, Matt. That's really nice of you. And I'm very much looking forward to our session together, everybody. And of course, I couldn't do it without my sidekick, my producer, my business operations manager here at Lightbulb Moment. And in case you're wondering about the same last name, yep, brother and sister, family business, no comments on that. Mike is here for you in chat. If you have any problems, you can let him know. And what we need to do, of course, is have a look at our tools, make sure we can communicate properly. So the first thing I'd love you to do, please, is wiggle your mouse on the screen. And at the bottom, click on participants. Now, if you are on an iPhone, an iPad, a tablet, it's a little bit different. You don't have to worry about this bit. But if you're on a computer, please click on the participant panel. What will open up then is the feedback icon, so you can answer questions really easily. Now you do have those on your tablets as well. So let's everybody click on that green tick. It's the yes button. So the yes button or the green tick. Now some of you may have noticed Zoom has made some changes to their interaction options. If you've got the latest version of Zoom, they do turn off automatically, but if you've got different versions of Zoom, it doesn't quite function the same way across all of them. Lots of green ticks, lots of yes buttons from you all. Now you can move those panels around if you want to. We're going to use this throughout the session to answer questions. So you can say yes, you can say no if you want to, all good. And I will clear those and move on. Now I'm getting some feedback that my webcam is a little bit slow, so I'm going to turn it off for a moment, but I can turn it on later on if you really want me to, but we'll see how the internet connection goes. And Kevin, hello Kevin, says some people have separate reactions like me. Yes, so you might have the option for reactions at the bottom of your screen and you can click on those as well. You're more than welcome to anytime. Let's also open up our chat window, please. So again, wiggle your mouse on the screen if you haven't already and click on that speech bubble and then you open up your chat window. And what we need you to do is should be set to everyone. And then that means when you share something, a question, a comment, and maybe a link to a resource, then everybody will see those. And we really encourage you to get stuck in to that chat window. We really want to hear from you and have a conversation with each other. You could link in with each other. You could share your Twitter handle, all of those kind of things. Morning, Lisa. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so what we're going to do in our session today, we've got our 60-minute session where we're going to be looking and reflecting on what you've learned about virtual classrooms recently, because it was a bit of a steep learning curve for some of us last year. We're going to look at your virtual classroom wins and successes, and as Matt said, we've got a few to share ourselves. We're going to look towards what is going to be our vision, what should we be doing this year to really make our virtual classrooms fly. And this is a 90-minute webinar, a bit of a different webinar from usual. So if you can stay for the extra 30 minutes, we will have breakouts where you can verbally actually talk to each other. You can turn your webcam on if you want to. And we will also have a clinic there where you can ask me any questions you like about virtual classrooms. So let's start off with our reflection. We all know how important reflection is. And we all know that sometimes people don't always do it. And do you know what? I include myself in that. Dwight, the session is being recorded. It will be available publicly, no problem at all. So we're going to do some reflection now. Now, in the welcome emails that we sent you, there were some self-reflection questions to get you in the mood for our session. But don't worry if you didn't do it before. We're going to tackle these questions together today. And the first question is about your biggest challenges when designing and delivering virtual classrooms over the last few months. So let's start with that question. Let's get a sense of what some of those challenges are now, please. So in the chat window, please share one of your challenges, not all of them. We could spend all day on this question, I'm sure, but let's have a chat about one of your challenges. What's one of them? We've got home distractions. Yeah, we used to have office distractions. Home distractions are worse, I think, absolutely. Kids, pets, all sorts of different things. Internet connections, learner engagement. Yeah, that connection speed is an issue. That's why I've turned my webcam off for now. Not having the best tool for the job, says Tracy, and a lot of people are using things like Teams or Skype, and it's just not made for virtual classrooms. Having to adapt things to virtual, sharing content in breakout rooms, time to actually prepare. And it does take time to do this properly for live online. And I know we don't always have that time, and we have to do the best with what we've got. The more time, the better. And the more we do it, the quicker we'll get. It's that really hard kind of balance to make. Confidence with the new technology. The more you use it, the better you'll get. And not run before you walk. It would be really good to maybe just start small. Oh yes, not being able to copy a poll to a future poll. Not all things can do that. If you're using Zoom, Birch, then you can set up a template and then the poll will be available for you in the future. You can do that. Okay, so we've got lots of different things, and there's lots of different kind of problems that we have and different challenges. Now, Mike, you said you like something that Dell wrote. If you want me to pull it out, then do just let me know. And Lindsay says Zoom fatigue. Oh, that's a challenge. Do you know, I think it's less about Zoom fatigue and it's more about meeting fatigue. It's more about webinar fatigue. It's that kind of thing. So I do know what you mean. There's a lot of that going on. So we've got a flooded chat. We've got lots of stuff being shared, which is absolutely brilliant. Okay, so as Matt said, we ran this series of webinars last year, starting with the first steps in engaging virtual sessions, and then looking at design and finishing with digital body language. And I'm going to pick out a couple of points from each of these webinars, either as a refresher if you were there, or to pick up on some key points if you weren't. And our first webinar of the series, we focus very much on the delivery of sessions, including terminology. Now, a webinar, which is what we are definitely on today, is all about large groups. It's all about broad brushstrokes of interaction. So I can't necessarily get to know you as individuals really well, but it's also about getting to know you as a group. So we can have discussions, but they're in chat. And I can see, for instance, Mike's asking about netiquette, but there's a little story or two in there. So having those conversations between you can be really good. Also, we've got the virtual classroom. And this is about having much smaller groups, so you can have those audio discussions, so you can get to know individuals, and the interaction is much more based on the individual. Now, I'm going to ask you a poll at this point. Let me launch my poll. I'd just like to know, if we're focusing on virtual classrooms, not webinars like today, but the virtual classrooms you run for training, how many attendees do you usually have? I know that there will be differences. I know some things will be one, some things will be another, but let's have a finger in the air, an average, a rough idea. So let's get your ideas in here. We've got a good number of you voting. I'm going to give you a 5-second countdown before we end the polling. So 5, 4, 3, 2, last chance, hit submit, 1. Okay, so let's close this poll and let me share the results with you. So what we can see is the large majority of you, 52%, have up to 10 people. I think that's perfect. A light bulb moment, we have up to 10 people in our virtual classroom. Now, 39% of you said 11 to 30. Absolutely great. Now, what's not on my diagram is that you can have a large virtual classroom, and that's what we call that 11 to 30. It's still a virtual classroom, but we know there's a difference between having kind of 8 or 10 people and 28 or 30 people. And then some of you said up to 50, and some of you said more than 50. Let me close that poll now. And there, I would call those webinars. Anything over 30, I would call a webinar. You can still have learning, you can still have design and interaction. They're just a little bit different. So that poll should have closed for you. If it hasn't, you can just click on the X and that will close out of your way. So it's really good. If you're at that 10 or under, fantastic. If not, then it's not wrong, it's just different. And Alison says the larger the group, the harder to keep track visually of attendees. Yes, Alison, great point. And we're going to come back to that towards the end of our webinar. You make a really interesting point there. And this point about seeing people, I think it's really important when people are geographically remote that they aren't distant in terms of our learning, our collaboration, our conversation, our human connection. One of the biggest issues we come up against when thinking about delivering live online is that people say, well, I can't see people, I can't feed off their energy. And that's a real challenge. Francis says 11 to 30 is a huge range. We'd be interested to know the bias towards one end or the other of that scale. We won't go above 15, for instance. Good point, Francis. Next time I run this webinar, I'll put another little thing in there so we can find out. That would be a good one. And some people are saying, you might have to stretch on that. So we've certainly had to be a little bit more flexible than we would like to be. So your interaction with the audience through chat, like we're doing right now, polling, answering and asking questions and allowing time for all this really allows you to see people in different ways. And it's great that you're sharing those things on chat about what you do and what's right for you. Let's share some ideas and inspiration. How do you engage your virtual audience? What are some things that you've done to engage your virtual audience? Share some ideas in chat, please. What are some things that you've done to engage your virtual audience? A workbook alongside the lesson. Unleash the power of breakout rooms, says Andrea. Thank you. Recap bingo, quizzes on Kahoot, polls, breakouts, collaboration board, share screen, Padlet, quizzes, humor and empathy. Love that. Screens on, breakout rooms, pre-work to get them thinking beforehand, whiteboards, questions and answering, Nearpod. Oh, I haven't used that in ages. That sounds like a good one. Feedback questions and answers. Gina, I love that. Silly hat being worn after breaks to share feelings. Fantastic. We've got word clouds, pre-course workbook, polls, lots of humor. Unmute mics, that's a really important one. Cameras can be great. We've also got a quiz going whilst people are joining. introducing ourselves, whiteboards, use their examples, emoji barometer. Sheila, I am loving that. Like, how are we feeling today? Sad face, angry face, whatever's going on there. Constant feedback from the class, says Daz. That is absolutely brilliant. Preset exercises, loads of fantastic stuff. I'm loving all of these examples. And what we've got here is we then moved into our second webinar, which was about design. So all of these things that you've just said are brilliant for interaction, brilliant for engagement. And we've got to design these things really well. Your skills in L&D absolutely apply to design and delivery of virtual classroom. It's about doing things differently. This activity we did in the webinar as a whiteboard, and it shows that actually some of the things we normally do face-to-face have an equivalent live online. If you loved your flip charts, you've got whiteboards usually. If you want to speak to the person next to you, if that's your activity, well, usually you've got private chat, and so on. When designing live online, when that's new, I always advise people start with the outcome, focus on the activity, and then go, well, how are we going to do this live online? And this flowchart helps you to consider the content you're delivering and to avoid tool fatigue. We don't just want green tick, green tick, green tick, green tick, green tick. Oh gosh, it would get boring. Now, we've actually teamed up with Breeio across all of these webinars to offer you an interactive version of that flowchart. And Mike has gone and pasted the link in chat, so you can click on that. But also we will have the link in a resources page we will share at the end. So you don't have to do that now if you don't want to. So when we're thinking about design, designing virtual classrooms, it does call on your face-to-face skills. But we also have to work differently. We know that. What virtual classroom design tips do you have, or processes do you follow? So again, let's share in chat so we're having a bit of a reflection about what we do, about what's really good, sharing that with others, and also learning from others. So hopefully there'll be some tips you can pick up from other people. What virtual classroom design tips do you have? So no longer than an hour and a half for the session, 10 minutes maximum sharing content, have more breaks, shorter sessions, make it varied, teach, think, activity, groups, full page images, love that, maximum 3 points per page, minimum size 32 font, loving those suggestions, short sessions, know your learning group, start with the end in mind, lots of visuals, break it up into 2 to 3 minute sections with interaction, love that. Less than 2 hours, lots of discussion, pick up the pace, keeping everyone involved. I do a whole day, which you can do, Stacey, because what you're saying is lots of breaks and interaction. So as long as it's designed and delivered really well, you can do a whole day. It's just not usual. It's not always the best way, but you absolutely can do it. And I'm sure you're doing an amazing job. Short, sharp input, quick activities, have enough interaction to keep people engaged. Don't overload the screen with too many words. High five that, Helen. Include a co-host. Expect everything to take longer and less slides. There's been an interesting conversation I've had on Twitter about how many slides we should have. So thank you for that, Kevin. Surprise your audience with a variety of activities. Thank you, Andrea. Really good point there. Activities will every so often use video. Rena says tonality. I'm assuming, Rena, you mean your voice and changing the tone. And if you meant something different, then please let me know. And get really good feedback, have different interactions. Jane says whole days are exhausting. They really are, Jane. But you get used to it after a time. You'll definitely get used to it. Some fantastic things that you shared there. Thank you so much. And in our third webinar, we focused on digital body language and tackling that issue of trying to understand people's feedback, even if we aren't with them, even if we can't see their faces. And the way to use digital body language is to deconstruct what you normally do face-to-face and then rebuild it into the virtual environment. So where I'd normally look around the room for body language feedback, I might use the chat window to get that feedback instead, or use these interactions every few minutes. And it helps me start to get to understand that individual, 8, 10, 15 people that I have in my session. And all of those interactions are what builds into an activity. I might start with a closed question that people answer with a green tick or a red X. Understand where people are, then maybe if you put a green tick, add more in chat. Perhaps then somebody had contributed and I might follow up with a whiteboard. From there, we might unmute microphones to hear what people are saying and build relationships with each other. All of these different uses of tools I can design in and use to understand more about the people I'm working with at every stage. And that's what I'm hearing you guys do with all of that great suggestions that you've just shared. So when we're thinking about digital body language, I'd love to know, how are you using the platform tools and how you facilitate your discussions and activities that make the best use of digital body language? So basically everything you've been saying to me about interactions and getting people involved and having those discussions, that is all like you do face-to-face, so that you observe people, so that you can adjust your delivery and your pace, so that you can tailor your delivery. That's all digital body language when it's live online. So how do you do that? Paste a lot into chat. I respond using emojis to comments in the chat. Love that, Jane. That sounds like you're using Teams, and it's really good with emojis and sometimes animated GIFs. Andrea says, I struggle to look at the camera. Oh, Andrea, sometimes putting things like your chat window or your notes or something right under where your camera is can be good. You don't have to look there the whole time, as long as you glance every now and then. Otherwise, it's a bit like staring. Open the microphones, hear their voice. You get so much richness from that. Remain enthusiastic to keep them engaged. Yeah, if I was like, yeah, okay, we've got smile, camera on, emojis, chat and GIFs. I mean, that's just boring, isn't it? We don't want that. Jane says, if I present alone, then I may pre-record parts so I can focus on the chat. That's another way of doing it. There are all sorts of different techniques that we can use. Use a hand up to ask questions. A tick sheet, says Anthony, to gauge individual interaction. That's a really good thing. If you're not sure about keeping track of things, just having a list of people's names on your desk and a quick tick to go, yeah, they answered, yes, they've unmuted, then you might kind of look and go, Alison hasn't said much today. Maybe I need to just give her a little prod. Try and show your hands and upper body, not just your face. We've also got, so a couple of people have asked for my camera. Let's see if we can get my camera working again. Let's see if there's less lag like we had before. James is asked to put the camera on and the microphone on to say hello at the start, even if you can't keep it on due to bandwidth. Just that top and tail can be really good. Julie, 2 screens, high-fiving that. Screen real estate is your best friend at this point. And what have we got? Send out delegate notes using polls, monitor input by seeing who's volunteered, and not being afraid to use humor, Rena. Rena, on one of my webinars that I ran at the end of last year, they actually ran a competition to see how many times I smiled in that webinar and laughed. So I'm with you on that, but we don't need to be stand-up comedians. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got coming up then in our next section, which is also around about virtual classroom wins. Last year was full of all sorts of challenges, but it was also jam-packed with different successes and certainly lots of learning points. And it's the successes that we want to turn to now. So I'm going to go to Matt, actually. Matt, I'd love to hear from you, please, to tell us a little bit about the success and how that played out with some of your clients.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Well, one of the standout kind of stories of one of the Breeio clients, one of the companies that really adapted successfully is Holroyd Howe. They're in the business of providing contract catering services for independent schools around the UK. And so that means during lockdown and limitations of 2020, the Holroyd Howe team not only had to deal with the disruption to their own business, but also the disruption and the kind of uncertainty of what was happening in the schools. They themselves were furloughed and so weren't able to really get started on this transformation work until kind of July, August time. Now, Sue Ward, who we're going to hear from in a moment, and her colleagues then successfully converted 7 of their face-to-face courses that are part of a 3-month pathway within their catering operation. And they use Breeio and Zoom to kind of manage this transition. And they had some wonderful results. Fewer cancellations, and attendance was up. The attendees said that they loved the courses that the team had designed. They ended up saving money because people didn't need to travel, and they saved on printing, and it was also a bonus environmentally. And all of that meant that they were able to beat the goals that the business had set for them in 2020. So I think the question is, well, how did they do that? They were successful. Well, I would say, Sue would say they stuck to many of the things that we've talked about here. They kept their class size small so that it could remain interactive. They worked hard on the design to make sure that they're using a lot of interaction within the session to keep the energy up. They have a producer. They've used the producer role really well, especially as they got started. And they continue to have someone who comes in just at the start to help sort out any technical issues and then maybe can disengage and let the session run. And they've used Breeio's Zoom integration to make sure that the whole thing works really smoothly. For example, managing the bookings and getting all of the attendance recorded automatically within the learning management system. So some great ingredients there, I think. But I wonder if we could bring Sue Ward in at this point. Sue, thanks for joining us. You and your team have done an amazing job managing this transition to the virtual classroom. We've talked about some of your special ingredients there. I wonder what other piece of advice would you share with the group today? What was the kind of essential ingredient, do you think?
Thanks, Matt. Firstly, we are very proud within the team at Holroyd Howe because we're a very small team. There's just the 3 of us, and incredibly proud of our virtual classroom portfolio that is continuing to grow and develop. In answer to your question, our essential ingredients would really be around the importance of practice and rehearsing. We all know as facilitators and trainers within learning development the importance of practice. So the key approach that we took as a team after coming back out of furlough and going, right, we're going to do this and we're going to be ready to support our business and our teams from September, is we firstly, once we'd initially converted the classroom, the initial conversion, we firstly would have a walkthrough. So we really took the approach of let's look at this as if we're delivering a play, we're delivering some great theatre here, and we really want to engage our audience and our learners. Let's have a walkthrough, and we do a dry run. And it gave us as a team the opportunity to tweak and discuss ideas, many of which we'd got from the webinars that we joined last year, which Joe and yourselves had run, which was incredibly valuable and helpful. So we would do that, and then whoever was the course owner would go away and tweak and do some edits and maybe put in an exercise or an activity. We would then organise what we called a full dress rehearsal. So the full dress rehearsal would be the 3 of us, and we would always try to invite a couple of other colleagues from within the support team to really give us the opportunity to practice the timing, to practice using our tools, to practice the online facilitation skills, and really to build our confidence. This was new to us, and as Joe was saying earlier, we were losing our beloved flip chart. So we were saying, right, let's use a different way. Let's use the whiteboards. Let's use the polls. Let's use the annotation. So it's really about our confidence as well as ensuring our learners. And for us, practice, in answer to your question, Matt, practice is without doubt an essential ingredient to ensuring for us a really smooth transition from face to face of our virtual classroom, but also ensuring that we're keeping that focus on our learners, making sure they're having a great learning experience and achieving those objectives that Joe talked about earlier. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Great. Oh, thank you, Sue. Thanks so much. It's been great to hear about your work, and we just hope it really continues to go well for you this year. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Sue, for sharing that. Some really important stuff there about those special ingredients. And that's kind of where I want to move to next. Part of our conversation, part of that reflection that some of you filled in, was around the successes that you've had, because with challenge, with learning and doing this, obviously comes success. So in the chat, please think about your own ingredients, your own special ingredients for success, and let's share some of those virtual classroom design and delivery wins, those successes you've had. It could be something really small, like I learned how to do this. That's fantastic. It could be something around a whole program that you've done, or anything in between. So like Sue was talking about, and Kevin put in the chat there, I was just going to type practice, practice, practice. So what is it that's been successful for you in the virtual classroom design and delivery that you've done? Laura's learned how to make videos on PowerPoint. PowerPoint is so powerful. Just being yourself, says Stacey. You know, I was writing in my course yesterday, my virtual classroom facilitator training course. We've got a section on it's you, it's your personality. I mean, I might be at volume 11 with 2 cups of coffee, but it's still me. So definitely be natural. Review feedback, always really important for adapting our sessions. Really like that. I pulled out my flip chart and got off my chair. I'm seeing more of that, where people have the flip chart kind of behind them. Now we have to be a bit careful. What can you see? What can you not see? You're turning your back to people. Is it big enough? But you can do it. There's all sorts of techie things you could do to make that interesting as well. Use breakouts. A tiny win, says Francis, is to temporarily unmute yourself in Zoom. Just press the space bar. That is really useful. Being proactively over prescriptive in explaining activities. Andrea, I'm really glad I got that one out. But yeah, it's really explaining what's going to happen, because that helps people do the activity. Simplifying content, cutting out padding. Oh, Tracy, I could take a few tips from you, but I've certainly been working on that the last few years. Getting to grips with the technology is really important. Include videos in PowerPoint is great, but keep them short. Yes, depending on your platform, you might be better off running the video separately to PowerPoint, but you definitely can do it in PowerPoint if you are sharing your screen. Using class notebook in Teams, there's all sorts of different extra things that you can use. There's Breeio, obviously there's things like Kahoot, Socrative, Mentimeter, Slido, a million other external tools. And things like Zoom are having, and I'm trying to remember the name of them, Zaps, Zoom apps that add in, and Teams has got them as well. All sorts of good stuff there. Having just to adapt from going from face-to-face to virtual, that's a win in itself. Learning the new technology. Oh, Rena, I love this. Applying the human touch. That's really important in what we're doing. Just because we're using tech doesn't mean we're robotic. Using the whiteboard and getting the trainee to add to it during the lesson, loving that. Not using long words, keep it simple. Copy and paste, says Jane, and putting instructions into the chat thread, love that. Bringing in the other tools, we were just discussing that. Anonymous annotations on Zoom, says Lindsay. That's a really nice way to get people maybe to open up and share a few more things. Give mouse control to the delegates. That's brilliant, Emma, for anything software based. If you're teaching Excel, for example, getting them to go and click on the auto sum button, much better than me just showing you or having a screen grab. give a lot of clarity before exercises. Celia asks, what is WooClap? WooClap, Celia, is similar to Mentimeter if you've used it. It's an external cloud-based website where you can have quizzes and activities and things like that. And talk about pets that come on the screen. Loving that. We've had lots of cats that we've seen walking across webcams, lots of dogs barking and all sorts of different things. Loving all of that. Thank you very much. And I think Mike shared the instructions of saving chat. If you want to keep all of these ideas, he'll share that again for you. Oh, there we go. He's just done it. See, he's pretty good at his job, is that Mike? Okay, so what we did in partnering up with Breeio is we've done some research surveys. So Breeio has been absolutely amazing at doing a variety of different surveys and research across all of our webinars. And you shared a lot of success stories, and we'll be publishing some of these later on. And I wanted to pick up on some themes here. So we know that focusing on our learners is absolutely key. And this quote highlights the importance of interactivity and activities to be able to read that digital body language and adjust what you are facilitating in your virtual classroom. And a lot of people have been on those really boring webinars with nothing to do. And perhaps the first faltering virtual classrooms we had to get online at the beginning of 2020 weren't quite where we wanted them to be. So it's important to let people know that our sessions are interactive and to be prepared to get stuck in. Laura asks, how do you check attentiveness? What I do, Laura, is remember we're talking about kind of 10, 15 people in a virtual classroom. It's things like that, Laura. You've just asked a question. I know you are attentive. So you've got a big tick in my brain next to Laura is being attentive. It's all those interactions and those activities. And have you done a green tick? Did you put something on the whiteboard? That's what I mean when I'm talking about that. Our delivery is something live online. It can be helped by a producer, which is the job Mike is doing today. And that is imperative on a webinar. We've got over 160 of you here today. But it can also be really helpful in a virtual classroom if you're less confident with the technology or newer to delivering virtual delivery. And somebody shared in the chat earlier on that they had somebody come on just at the beginning to help get everything ready, 15, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, and then they facilitated the rest of the session on their own. And we know that not everyone has the resource, though, to have a producer. So you could kind of have that kind of co-presenter, co-host. You also learn about the technology, which is really helpful. And I love this point about saying that the co-presenter, or could be the producer in this case with Mike, almost gives permission for the group to dissent. Maybe they'd put something opposing in chat just to get that conversation going. I really love that quote. And of course, we have to focus on ourselves as well. As some of you said, it can be a little bit exhausting when we're not used to doing this online. And we don't have all of our physicality on display. We need to concentrate a bit more on our verbal delivery, as I think was mentioned a little bit earlier on as well. And it definitely takes more energy at first, as you've said. And I also love this quote about a bit of chaos. And Matt, I think you've got a little bit of a share for us on a great success as well. And this picture, I'm really interested to know more about this.
Yes, intriguing, isn't it? Yes. So yeah, I just want to share another success story from another one of our clients. We're a learning partner of the largest care home provider in the UK, and they obviously have many courses that are kind of hands-on and were difficult to transfer into the virtual classroom. But their L&D team has gotten really creative. One of their key training courses is called venipuncture, and it has to do with, injections and drawing blood and things like that. The sort of thing that people really need to practice, and we want them to practice. Well, they've transformed this out of necessity, really, this classroom course into a virtual course, and they send these kits out to the participants. And people join the online session and then do the hands-on practice with these kits. So we just thought that was a kind of a really adaptive approach that was brought on by the necessities of 2020. And It's just interesting to see how people have adapted.
I love that, Matt. Thank you. I certainly heard a few years ago that you could do wine tasting online where they sent you wine. And now I'm torn. Do I want the wine or do I want the arm and learn how to do injections? It's a bit of a challenging one. And Kevin says that is the ultimate homework kit. Yeah, I think so. I think it's absolutely brilliant example of working differently. And Davey says, I can confirm virtual wine tasting is great. Love that. Thank you very much. And Tracy says that is amazing. It really is. So let's turn back to all of you now. We've shared a variety of different virtual classroom wins. What have you learned from these success stories and what others have shared just now that you can apply? So in chat, please, what are you going to apply from what we've just covered in the last few minutes, from Sue, from Matt, and from everyone else too in chat? What have you learned from these success stories you're going to apply? We love that workaround. Practice timing. I struggle with this. Stacey, it does get better when you do it more, but I'll be honest, timing has to be flexible, but not so flexible we drop things. Stacey, Mike is going to drop into chat a facilitator guide template we use. It's also in the resources, I think, that might help you plan your timing a little bit as well. Practice more on whiteboards, explain the activities in detail, use the anonymous annotations to get people involved, have a look at WooClap, get the delegates moving, have a dress rehearsal, adding instructions in chat. It can be really quite powerful to get that information. Keep the high energy level up. Beata, you're right. And you know what? If I do that with you, you give it back to me, I give it back to you, and it's really brilliant. I like the idea of physical materials being sent home to use in the class. Lovely. Going to try and keep as jolly as you. Jenny, you'll need lots of coffee, but I'm sure you'll get there. Just everything really, as I'm a total novice. It's Fane. You are welcome, Fane, and just start small. Start where you're comfortable and build. Putting a virtual pack that may include coffee, biscuits, and a work group and aid memoirs. I love all that. I'm a relative newcomer, and this has opened my eyes to the range of things you can do. Fantastic. Keep refreshing and experimenting. Practice, give feedback. What have we got? Don't assume you can't do it virtually. That's a really good one. Upfront prep with the participants, get off my chair, get moving, timing, and ensure the learners are engaged, stay positive. Don't speak to anyone else or check emails during the day. Don't panic if there's a technical glitch. Absolutely. Technical things happen, but they happen when we're face to face as well. What fantastic things that you are going to go and apply. That's absolutely brilliant. Jeanette has got a question there. Please answer, Jeanette, if you've got some ideas. And Jeanette, if you can stay for our extra 30 minutes, you might pick up some stuff there as well. Whew. Well, on the back of all of that, what we need to do is have a look at this year, at the strategy and the tactics with regards to virtual classrooms as part of your bigger approach to blended and digital learning. 2020 was a remarkable year in pretty much every way. From an L&D perspective, there was mass migration to live online and digital offerings. And the pivot to digital was amazing. We know that many people had to do this, and they had to do it in days or weeks rather than perhaps the months we would have liked for the skills development. So we now need to start looking forwards a little bit. Matt, can you tell us about what your roadmap is for 2021?
Yeah, we also made that pivot quite quickly as things moved heavily into virtual classroom. We added some great integration with Zoom and WebEx and other platforms. So, and everything we're hearing from our clients and from industry surveys and things is that people don't really intend to go back from this, at least not entirely. So we're going to stay focused on further integration with virtual platforms, whether that's kind of deepening the integration with things like Zoom or WebEx, or expanding into other popular platforms like Teams and others, but also helping you design learning virtual sessions that your people really love. I think that's a really important thing. So we want to stay on that task. And then at the end of it, making sure that the admin of it all doesn't overwhelm you. And we want to make sure that the tools that we provide are working with you to make things as efficient and impactful as possible. So those are the kind of key ideas for our development of Breeio in 2021.
Thank you, Matt. And I love that point that you said, like, we're not going back. That's what our surveys are saying. And we've got some stuff that we wanted to share from our surveys. We've got more we'll share and publish about that later. But we know it's not easy to respond to our remote audiences, including we're not necessarily sure about how to do that. The issue of time constraints in our work has come up again in this survey. Knowing our platform really helps with this, and the more you do, the quicker it becomes to do eventually. And there's that bottom point on this graph where one respondent thought that people should just be able to concentrate, but I think we might need to debate that another time, or maybe that's one to chat about in your breakout rooms. Now, there are tools in most of our virtual classroom platforms and available externally, like Breeio, Mentimeter, Jamboard, and more, where you can really get engagement. Emoticons, whiteboards, and polls are all popular. You can see on this graph from survey respondents. And it's all about making sure that we engage with people, help with their learning, and get feedback ourselves to help our own delivery. And this word cloud highlights how people read their virtual audiences with different techniques like breakouts, quizzes, stories, and using the webcam, of course. And there are some great suggestions here, and the variety is quite inspiring. However, there seems to be a big reliance on webcams, and I totally get that when virtual is new to us. However, what if webcams are turned off? How would you engage and read your audience then? Let's share some quick ideas in chat. I'm not saying you shouldn't have your webcams on. Do have them on. They're amazing and I love them. But treat them as a bonus. So how can you read your audience? How can you feel what's going on if you don't have your webcams? With sound, says Trish. I really like that. Trish, you've asked a question about how do you do the Word doc. Maybe you need to expand on that for somebody to answer that. We use chat. We hear from people, virtual hands up, with polls and being interactive. Love that, Laura. With the mics. Jane says, I find this really hard when I'm delivering safeguard training, as I like to see the emotion. And it's brilliant if you can, Jane, but maybe it's about, well, what chat questions can I ask? What emoji questions can I ask? Oh, how do you do the word cloud, says Trish. The clever people at Breeio did that. I'm sure if you Google it, there's some websites where you can put your data in and it will make it for you. Emoticons, ticks, polls, whiteboards, annotate, voice projection. Basically, everything that we've talked about so far is what we use. Not everyone can have their webcam on. One of our survey respondents in South Africa detailed that how bandwidth was a really huge issue for them. And we have to respect people's personal decisions not to turn that on. So all those things that we've talked about today, all those different interactions, that is digital body language in addition to a webcam if you can use it. Now, I wrote a blog recently considering a way forward for virtual classrooms this year, where I focused on 3 core elements. Finding the timing for the delivery of your live online learning. It's probably not a whole day like you'd planned in 2019, although we've seen it can work. Skills are an essential element for moving forward. That's why you're here today, ensuring your staff know how to design and facilitate live online and for your platform of choice, whether it's Teams or Zoom or something else. And investment for your staff and internal audiences. It's partly about getting good training for people, but it's also the right platform to allow for engaging sessions and focusing on learning culture. And Matt, there's an analogy or a parallel here to kind of e-learning, I think, isn't there?
Yeah, I think e-learning, or really any way that we use technology in learning, I think that we've all probably experienced that sense of real achievement in clearing the technical hurdle, whether it's, launching your first web page, or um, exporting your first e-learning course and it actually works and completes. And there's that kind of that technical achievement. And I think we probably experienced quite a lot of that in 2020. This big migration to virtual. Wow, I've run my first Zoom session, and it worked, and everybody attended, and we managed to keep the register and things. And I know we went well beyond that, but I hope that as in the same way that as we looked at e-learning and made that really impactful and work for the business, that we want to apply that same discipline here. We want to really work on our craft, not just clearing the technical hurdles, but delivering great impact.
Thank you, Matt. Very well said. It's all about developing that craft. And that's really where our last reflection point takes us, is we asked you to consider how you're going to improve this year. And you might want to think about this with regard to your personal design and delivery skills, or focus on the team you are managing or a division you are leading, depending on what your role is and what it is that you're doing. So let's think about your year ahead. Let's think about 2021. How and maybe what improvements are you planning? That could be for yourself. It could be for your team. So share in chat, please. How or what are you improving in your virtual classroom offering for yourself and your team? And we've got some good conversation in chat, and Daryl is sharing a book there as well. The Jeremy Dalton reality check, just in case you're on audio and wanted to know what that was. So what are we going to look at improving for ourselves and our teams this year? Using other tools like Mural, says Gina, really good. And what I will just do and share in chat for you, it's not an exhaustive list. There are other things out there, but there's a list of some tools if you've never heard of them. You don't have to use them. You don't have to use all of them, but they're just some things you could look at if you wanted to. Support trainers, excellent. Laura said, can you share more about practice and experience? Laura, good question. I'm going to save that in a moment, Laura, and I'll come back to that when we come to our question and answers. I'm going to go through these answers first, but I've made a note of it and I'll come back to it, Laura. Improve production skills and use of the platform functions. That gives a lot of confidence. Sharing best practice with tech, exploring more tools when you're ready for them. Make sure you've got your basics you're happy with first, but then start developing. Moving some learning onto Thrive, having more videos, trying to keep up to date and look at different methods. That's good. And attending webinars and things can be good for that as well. Get more interactive and bring more enjoyment to learning. Laura, I love that. Even more enjoyment. Try new ways of delivering online, and you can just try one or two things out in a session. It doesn't have to be everything that you change. Keep the learners engaged. My use of Zoom and the tools available on here, limited experience so far, but you can just develop that over time. Looking for ideas to continually improve the training function and keep this fresh. A lot of the things you can do, Wendy, is kind of sign up to newsletters, go on webinars and all sorts of different things and get ideas from different people, join communities and so on. Make sessions more specific, pre-learning, improve the design of the actual presentations, embed tools, have video guidance, expand the use of tools, add more videos, embed more tools, have a greater blend. Loving all of these different things that you can do. There's so many different things there that you can pick up on, and it's about what is right for you and your team, and starting where you are and not comparing yourself against someone else and going, oh, I can't do that yet. It's just like, well, how do I get there? What is it that I'm doing? Whew, we have been through a whole load of different things. Questions are up next, and Laura, your questions first. I've got it. I'll come back to it, I promise. let's have a really quick summary of what our session, this last 60 minutes, was all about. We reflected on those webinars from last year, including the idea of using all the tools at our disposal to start seeing our attendees so they don't feel quite so remote, about designing our sessions using a variety of tools and deciding if we've got time in our sessions to use them. And we have a design tool to help you thinking with that. And that digital body language is about understanding our training and our facilitation craft and being able to build those elements into the live online environment. We had some success stories that highlighted small groups in a virtual classroom. Design and production really helped, those ingredients of success. So thanks to Sue Ward for sharing that. We also thought differently about how to achieve that learning outcomes, such as sending out your materials to people. And we looked through a lot of those survey responses and success stories about what people were doing this year and last year, and help us to think about our developments for the coming year. So then we need to get to your questions. Now, Laura asks, can you share more about practice and experience? So in terms of practice, a lot of it can be on your own, Laura. It's just making sure, how do I do whatever I want to do in my platform? Now, if anybody can get a second device, it could be your phone or a tablet or an old laptop or your kid's computer, whatever it is, and log that in as an attendee to your practice session, it's amazing the difference it makes and the confidence you can have to glance over and go, yep, that's working. I've done that today when I first started sharing my slides. I glanced over to my old laptop and was like, phew, they're working. I had confidence. And that experience will come from doing more and more and more sessions and trying out different things. So Laura, if you had a more specific question or follow up, just let us know in chat. If you need to get going, thanks very much, no problem. Remember, we have the extra 30 minutes if you want it. What other questions do we have? Rena says, what is the ideal breakout time and share back for a group of 4? Oh, Rena, how long is a piece of string? It depends entirely on your question, your activity, and what you want them to achieve and your group. It could be as short as 5 minutes. If everyone's happy with the tech, if it's a quick question, if you want it to be short, sharp, snappy, get on with it. It could be 20 minutes or 40 minutes, depending on what the question is and what you want them to do. So I'm sorry, that's a really woolly question, woolly answer, but that's the best one you're going to get because it's up to you depending on those different things. Thank you, Yvonne, for your comment there. And all about building confidence. If you need to get going, absolutely no problem. We do have another few minutes of questions, and we do have our 30 minutes as well. What other questions do we have? We've got other people commenting on the breakout question, which is brilliant. Thank you very much. Laura asks, I'm interested in how we can extend the learning outside of the webinar, ideas on how we can blend it more now. Oh, Laura, lovely. And if you can stay for the 30 minutes, that would be really good to ask in your breakout room. So a lot of that could be around what your learning culture is. Maybe you've got some kind of learning management system, or you've got some kind of, what's the other word I'm looking for, like forum, like Slack or, Yammer, something like that. You could use that. Could even use old-fashioned email. Giving people projects and things might be good too. Joanna asks, activities for soft skill sessions normally use role play. Joanna, you can still use role play. Just get 2 or 3 people into a breakout with their webcams on if possible. So you can do that. Laura Foreman asks, where do we stand on GDPR and asking people to not screenshot or share on social media? You have to just ask them, explain why. Maybe kind of, if you do see it, ask them otherwise. Ultimately, if people want to take a photo or a screenshot and share it, they're going to, but you can tell them why not and what the implications are of that. Celia says about delegates who are only on a phone, and if they're only on a phone designed for it, give them another option, always use chat. I'm going to pause there. We are at the end of our time. If you've got more questions, you can always ask them on our community. And I just wanted to let you know what's next. We've got some resources for you on the link that is going to be in chat. We'll keep you posted with information about our upcoming events. And if you have ideas for future topics or other suggestions for us, please fill in the quick feedback survey. We'll be sending you in the next day or so. Or of course, you could email the Breeio team. So we also have an extra 30 minutes for discussion to follow on the session right now. So do stay if you want to for that. On behalf of Mike and I at Lightbulb Moment, Matt and the whole Breeio and Action team, thank you so much for your attention today and your great questions. Thank you so much.